All right, I'd like to call the Parks and Recreation meeting for January 25th, 2022 to order. And we will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and then we will start with the roll call.
Hale.
Present.
Cornwell.
Present.
Zibble-Wolf. Duzick.
Present.
Noyes.
Present.
Rannick.
Present.
Snyder.
Present.
Any amendments to the agenda?
There are none.
Declarations of conflict for anybody? And then we will consent to the calendar for the approval of the minutes for November 23rd, 2021.
I'd move to approve the minutes of November 23rd, 2021 as presented.
I'll second that.
Cornwell.
Aye.
Duzick.
Aye.
Noyes.
Aye.
Rannick.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Citizen issues, I see none. Unfinished old business, sports complex update for Tillamore and Montrose.
Good evening, members of the Park and Rec Commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, and I'm just going to go over a couple updates kind of on where we're at with the two sports complex projects. So the first one, Tullamore. So we, obviously the last few years we've been working on the master plan, got that approved, went into the mass grading, construction drawings, and then just finished the actual mass grading of the site last November. We then signed the contract for phase one construction documents in December, and then we just had a kickoff meeting a few weeks ago with our consultant for phase one. And this is kind of, and it's a little hard to see, but a outline of what is included in phase one. And so it's broken into a couple different packages. The first one being road frontage improvements. So obviously there's no road frontage on Cecil or Prairie yet. So that'll be kind of its separate package. If there's opportunity for that to go ahead of some of the internal work, we'd like to just kind of separate that. It's pretty easy, basic, straightforward. And then the internal portion of the park is also kind of broken up into a couple packages. So the main base bid will be 3 of the ball fields, the center concession restroom building, the parking lot on Killdeer, our maintenance yard, a shelter, and then adjacent landscaping. And then a couple alternate bids to that package will be the second parking lot as well as the 4 multi-use fields. And that's just kind of, if depending on how bids come in, if we have money to do them, we can add them to the scope, or there's things that we could possibly do in-house, and that's why we kind of separated those as well. So timeline wise, all the CDs are kind of expected to wrap up in July, August timeframe. And then as far as when we put it out to bid, according kind of to the timeline we presented last year sometime, we're looking at doing road frontage this year, and then we weren't going to do anything in 23, and then finally kick off with a big chunk of the construction in 2024. There haven't really been a lot of discussions on changing that to this point, but you know, with the construction drawings, they are going to include updated estimates. So once we get those numbers, that'll kind of help guide what we can actually do and when we can do it as far as construction. Any questions on Tullamore? Okay. Montrose. Not really a lot to show here, but we've kind of been working behind the scenes with the developer, Greenstone and the Snide Millers, as far as a footprint. So we've kind of settled on a 22.7 acre footprint, which is outlined in red here, which is kind of on the corner of Empire and Celtice. And so that that gives us a footprint for the 4 adult-sized softball fields, as well as a pad for a future community center and parking lot, and then a few regular just park amenities, playgrounds, open space, that type of thing. And so with the discussions with the developer, basically the PUD owes us 15.1 acres of parkland. And so with the footprint of 22.7, we'd have to purchase an additional 7.6 acres. And that's kind of where we're in negotiations right now as far as that cost, what that'll be, along with what the developer will construct for us, because they do owe us some sort of construction of parkland, so we're negotiating on what that value is as well. Timelines, I don't really have much on this one yet. We're just, like I say, just kind of in negotiations and discussions with them at this point. But I know Dave's hopeful that we can try to get some ground broken by the end of this year sometime. So obviously we'll still have to go through some more design, because we don't have a whole lot at this point, master plan, and then kind of what the phase 1 will be for this project as well. Any questions on Montrose? Anything you want to add, Dave?
No, the reason why we're bringing some of this stuff forward is simply we recognize from last year that some of these projects are taking a long time. And it's easy to lose track of, what's happening on them, that, why aren't they doing things? Well, there's a lot of stuff that happens. There's a lot, especially when we're in negotiations with developers or landowners, those types of things. They have their process, but we also have to work with council. We have to get approval. Even on the purchase, once we have a price, we have to go back to council, and they have to look at it. That comes out of impact fees. We have some money set aside through the ARPA funds, or at least designated. We're hoping that council will agree to help offset some of that, but those things do take time. Even stuff that's ready to go, an example would be Black Bay. Right now we're waiting for permits. We did get $750,000 in a land and water conservation grant, but that can't even move forward until we get the permit from the Corps of Engineer. So there's always a lot of hoops. But as soon as we can, we want to move these forward. Reminder that impact fees were adjusted last year that are higher rates, so we are collecting more, which will accelerate the Tullamore project, even this one to a degree, and then of course Black Bay. So
I have a question maybe for either one of you, and it might not matter for these given the time frames, but just with everything going on economic-wise or business-wise with companies trying to find workers, do you foresee any issues with delays, right? Like if you were to build right now, I know that's not happening with these, but are timeframes extended out longer?
yes, they could be. I mean, even supply issues, and that's one of the things as we're working on some of these, we're trying not to duplicate, we're trying to work through some of that. But there probably could be delays. It could mean that if we want to have it done, say, let's say phase 1 in 1 year, the cost will jump dramatic amounts. Yet if we give them a little bit longer timeline, say a year and a half, it may be that then they can work in it. Even if on the soccer fields, if we go in and do that work ourselves, we're facing the same thing with workers. Tracy's going to go over a few positions. So we're all dealing with it.
I think also projects of these scales, we shouldn't really have a problem finding companies to do them. But like say the shortages of supplies, obviously no one can control that at this point, so that could potentially delay things. But like what Dave was saying with our mass grading project, we had a pretty wide window for the bidding. And we still got 6 companies bid it. So I think as far as that goes, I'm not really concerned about not having labor. Again, just what the cost impacts are going to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the projection on completion on each of these 3, Black Bay, Tullamore, and then also over in Montrose, what what is your feel on that?
So, well, Black Bay was, if we're just talking about the phase one, would be about a year project. You know, I don't know.
Really, I think we kind of, with the change in the impact fees, we're looking at about a 10-year window for the Tullamore and for Black Bay. But that will eat up most of the monies we have. Montrose, we're hoping that most of what we're going to do right up front will be done by the developer through the agreements and the fees they didn't pay over the years with Montrose. And then it's going to, that'd be just the first phase, and then it's going to take time to go into the next, expansion of it. And that, some of that will be a bond issue. Some of it's just, we've got to recoup impact fees enough to be able to do it. So I think the priorities really are the Tullamore Sports Complex, which is for the youth, and Black Bay, because we've devoted so much to that. And then you're looking at finishing up the work at the landings, and then still trying to obtain extra parkland to meet our levels of service. So other things are going to take a back seat for a while.
Obviously, in that 10 years, there's going to be other parks that come out that we have to, neighborhood parks and that sort of thing that we'll still be working on too.
Thanks.
All right, next up is the Landings Park update.
That one I'll take. The landings has been a complicated project. It's involved a partnership between Avista Corporation and the city. And that portion is, we've worked through a lot of the things, and we actually have a beautiful amphitheater and public space, far better than I think any of us anticipated. We will be doing a dedication for it this spring, probably in May. Want to try and capture that when the weather's a little bit better, but we still have the spill gates of the North Channel Dam open to really, kind of that bling, if you will. It's a natural bling. But we want to do that. What format that takes, obviously there'll be some type of a concert. You can't have an amphitheater and not have a concert. I suppose we could do a play. Maybe we'll do both. Mm-hmm. But we want to make it into a celebration. Maybe one of the things we consider is having even like a foodie in there where it's an invite, and we use it as a fundraiser to kick off some improvements at Falls Park, or even at one of these, but it becomes a community celebration. We are looking at trying to see if we can move the concert series there. What else can we do to engage the site? People are already using it, but the more we can put in there, the better. With that said, go ahead and go to the next. I asked you to bring this forward. The area you see in red there's some obligations that the landowner of that property owes to the city. It's an extension of the Esplanade, bringing the existing part that's around the condos up to full repair, answering all that. There's a parking lot they have to put in. So there's a cost to that. And right now, the owner of the land, the company would like to pass that on to the developer who's purchasing the site. From the city's standpoint, we don't care if it's either one. It's just whoever has control of that land, ultimately, they have to put in those improvements. That's an obligation. We have, for the last probably year and a half, we've been working with them, even when the project was just first starting out, trying to make sure that, or ensure that the Esplanade goes really from Falls Park all the way up to the Spokane Street Bridge. It needs to be completed. We don't want to see it happen 10, 15, 20 years down the road because it is connected to development of the site. With that in mind, we've talked to the owner of the land, talked to the developers. They understand that for us to take on the obligation, which is what they would like to see, the city has to be made whole. So what we've said is the area in red is an area that we feel would be a proper offset if we were to get that to enhance the experience of the site that's just been built versus putting in that next, I'll call it the missing link of the Esplanade. We have other obligations from the existing. We have a couple stairways to put in. One of them coming right off of the amphitheater up to 3rd Street. We're not going to put that in when we don't know what it's going to connect to. So the developer will have to put in some public connectivity to that. But when they don't have designs, it's hard to do that. So that one will take time. On the Spokane Street side, we'd like to get that done and in, but those are just things. So it's actually being handled by our legal division. Currently, that whole project's been stalled because we understand that there's litigation going on both ways on it. And so we don't know what will happen ultimately, but from our standpoint, for the the Park and Rec Department to take on the obligation, we need to make sure that the citizens come out whole or maybe even a little bit ahead. And the area we have highlighted is what we feel would make it worthwhile. Obviously, both the developer and the owner of the land feel that that's more land and it's not worth it. And that's always their right. They could build something down there. They can put, buildings on that lower area. But to do that, then they have to finish the Esplanade and everything that goes with it. So we'll just see. Some things we don't have control over, the timeline or anything else, but we are, rest assured, we are working on it. Even if we don't end up with that, you still have a really nice site. We just want it to be beyond nice, to be great. And to be honest, we did not realize how good of how much land was down on that lower part till we cleaned it up, because that was part of the obligation we took on in obtaining the additional land that we did. So we removed a lot of piles of debris and just garbage that had been pushed over by the previous developer. So we'll keep you guys appraised as we can. Ultimately, whatever happens, we'll go back to the council, and then it's their say of whether they wish to take on the obligation in exchange or not. And then, of course, whatever the owner of the land wants to do. So I'm open to any questions you might have, but okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. I see none. Administrative staff reports. Park and Recreation current full-time openings.
Good evening, Tracy Stevenson, the Recreation Manager. We happen to have two full-time positions open. We still have, of course, if anyone wants to be a gym soup, scorekeeper, any of that, but the one position is not new. It is what used to be our recreation assistant in our office, and we have now changed the name to recreation outreach specialist. This position happened to be vacated like right before COVID hit, and so we decided to go ahead and put that position on hold just as a safety net for the protection of all the other staff. But we are now able to bring it back to the table, so we are looking for what we are calling our recreation outreach specialist. This position will be kind of in charge of doing a lot more with our marketing, our footprint on social media, just flyers, getting out. Also, our big thing is we really want them to connect with the community. We are looking for a person that's going to go to the civic organizational like luncheons and meetings and kind of delve into that and be able to help recruit for our volunteers and also for coaches and assistance with projects and so forth like that. They're also going to work with us on all of our special events. They're going to be in a kind of a supportive role for that. They will also, we have an employee right now that is our recreation supervisor that we hope stays for the next few years, but we know that retirement is kind of out there, and her huge part of it is bringing in our sponsorship dollars. She has brought in a few million, or over $1 million for us in her tenure, so we're hoping this is kind of a person she can groom and train and kind of get them out in the community and get to know the businesses and organizations that she's been working with. So that both positions that we have are open currently. So if you know someone or if anyone out there is listening and interested, it's open and it will close February 7th. So it's kind of a close coming in on that, but it's an exciting new position. We're excited to have that position filled back in our office. Then the other position that we have is not as happy. It's our recreation supervisor, Derek Hoffman, that we had. He has turned in his notice, and he is leaving us to go work in Spokane in the school district in a position that seems really fitting for him. But we need someone, so we are looking for the rec supervisor, and that position really focuses on our youth and some of our adult sports. So it's kind of the flag football, or River City basketball like tournament, league, the liaison with the school district for our gym usage, oversees our camp director for our spring break camp, winter camp, summer camp, also a lot more with our outdoor recreation. Summer movies is their big special event, but also the rec supervisor is involved with all of our special events, oversees a ton of staff for all the different sports, those kind of programs. So that's a big void that we're trying to fill. Again, that position is also open and closes on February 7th, so they're both out there. So, any questions on? We're kind of in the same boat as everyone else.
At this point, I think I'll also add the rec supervisor is one of our senior positions, but
Yes.
also another senior position that's still open is on the park side of it, and it's a senior park worker, and it's an irrigation specialist. So if you know anybody who's is top flight at irrigation, it's a position we need to fill.
My next part is just kind of a public service announcement that we'd like to get out there. We just became aware a couple of weeks ago of a scam that was going around because we just had like our bridal fair, and we're gearing up now for our spring arts and crafts fair, and we have had 3 different people call us and say, hey, I'm just checking, is my application turned in for a vendor? And we're like, no, we don't even have it. So what was happening was someone was advertising online, like our programs, and the people would pay through like Facebook, or somehow they would pay for it, and then they would then get a call saying, and so they thought they were getting a deal because they would see like ours advertised for $40 and that says you can pay $30, and they were like, oh, it must be like an online special, and so then they would pay that, but then the person that they paid would contact them and say, oh, you didn't pay enough to reserve your space, you're going to need to pay like an additional $30. So now it's like even more than what we paid. So that's when they would finally get more alerted to it. At first they just thought they were getting a deal, and then they would call us and be like, how come you guys are doing that? Now you're making me pay $70 when it's advertised for $40. But we really, it's not us. We're not the one. You're not even, unfortunately, you're not registered with us. So we've talked to the police department. We've told them that they're going to actually have to go somehow get their money back through this company, or if they did PayPal or however they paid them. But we've been advised, and what we're now have switched all our stuff to saying is that we will, on our application says that you will not be accepted and no payment will be charged until your application is turned in and that we contact you for payment. But I didn't realize that was kind of a scam out there, but people will do anything for a little bit. So it's not us. We're not taking Facebook payments or anything like that. But so if they don't see that kind of flyer that says that you have to turn it in and get accepted into our show before we require payment, then it's not ours. And so we just really need to catch it now because we also have all our post-fall festival applications out, and we don't want that to happen to a bunch of people in our community. That's it.
So Tracy, are those payments through that people would make ultimately are through the Dash system?
The
Or-
payments aren't through us at all. They're actually, Jill's the one that's been doing the most work on it, and she was telling me that,
No, I'm saying how do people know it's legitimate?
oh, yes, that would be, I mean, either they can call directly, and that's what we told a lot of people. I mean, you can call us directly and verify we've gotten your flyer, or gotten your vendor application, and then Haley will take their payment, or she can send them a Dash invoice from our office.
Dash is our
Online
online system.
sorry. Yeah.
Okay,
Any questions? Yeah.
thank you. Next, on to commission comments. Anybody from the commission have anything? No? Anybody? Anybody else? Good to go? All right, with that, we are adjourned.